I probably should say this at the front end. Spoilers, if you haven't watched the show, I'm going to be talking about a lot of the elements of the story. So there's really no way to avoid the spoiler nature of this conversation.
Force will be with you.
There was a lot that was good. And right off the bat, we see that this show felt like Star Wars. What do I mean by that? What do I mean by it felt like Star Wars? Well, what I think that means is you got an opening crawl, you had music, you had the opening screen feel like the beginning of a cinematic Star Wars show. Now, some of these might just be tokens to some, but it shows the care and the attention, I believe, that was put into this show. The music, with the exception of a few things, I didn't particularly love the music during Sabine's kind of motorcycle chase.
Commander, stand down. Sabine?
But the music, the composition, the switching between scenes, there was a lot of times that I noticed we would go from one location to the next scene and location, and that would all be carried by the music. You would hear the practical things going on in the background. If it was in the hangar, you would hear the ships coming in. If you were outside, you would hear the natural things like at the shipyard and those things. But the transitions were done so well. It felt like Star Wars, but not just the music, not just the cinematography, just all of how this show began, particularly in episode 1. Everything screamed Star Wars. Now, that hasn't always been the case with every Star Wars show. And the challenge is, how do you tell new stories in a Star Wars universe while not just reliving what has been, not just making the old tropes and kind of just fan servicing everything? And I don't feel that that's been what we've gotten. Instead, it's really this attention to detail about what makes Star Wars Star Wars. It's not just throwing lightsabers into a scene and all of a sudden you have Star Wars. It's this deeper kind of just feeling that you get that many actually didn't like about Andor. And I thought that was somewhat of a fair criticism, is that it didn't really always feel like Star Wars. I actually really loved Andor, and I thought it was an amazing story that was told. But if there's one criticism that I would agree with, it didn't always feel like Star Wars. And I think that the music could have helped with that the way it did here in this. It was clear that Dave's hand, Dave Filoni, or as some of I've seen called in my comments, Dave Baloney, his hand was really all over this. He directed the first episode, and it shows in that beginning sequence.